My name is Rachel Morgan, and at 38 years old, I stood at my mother's funeral, dreading the moment my sister Lily would arrive. It had been 6 years since she stole my fiancé, Daniel, a charming, self-made tech millionaire, and I hadn't seen either of them since. When they finally walked in, Lily flashed her oversized diamond ring with that same smug smile I remembered. But this time, something inside me had changed. There was a calm I never expected, because Lily had no idea who was waiting to meet her. Before I tell you how her face turned as pale as a ghost when she saw who I married, let me take you back to where it all began, 6 years earlier, when everything started to unravel. Back then, my life looked perfect on paper. I was 32 and thriving in my marketing career, living in a sleek apartment in downtown Boston. I had friends, ambition, and a routine I loved. But deep down, something was missing. I craved partnership, something lasting. Then came Daniel Green. We met at a charity gala, thanks to my college friend Olivia. He had a magnetic presence, dazzling smile, and a reputation for being a self-made tech genius. Our chemistry was instant. Daniel was generous, thoughtful, and exciting. We shared a love for art, travel, and ambition. Soon, we were inseparable. From weekend getaways to private dinners, every moment with him felt like a dream. After 18 months, he proposed on a yacht in Boston Harbor with a 5-carat diamond ring. I said yes with tears in my eyes. My mother, Diane, was thrilled. She adored Daniel and immediately began planning the wedding. But Lily, my younger sister, was harder to read. 2 years my junior, we had always had a rocky relationship. Lily envied what I had: friends, grades, recognition. Still, I made her my maid of honor, hoping to close the gap between us. When I introduced Daniel to the family, Lily turned on the charm. She laughed at every joke, touched his arm a little too often, and offered to help with wedding planning. I chose to see the best in her, but Daniel began to change. He became distant, preoccupied, and oddly critical. He'd snap at things he used to love: my laugh, my clothes, my routines. At first I thought it was wedding stress. Then came the earring. While cleaning out his car before a dinner party, I found a single silver earring with a tiny sapphire. It was Lily's. I remembered her wearing it at our engagement party. When I confronted Daniel, he claimed he'd given her a ride to the florist. Lily's story matched his, word for word. I wanted to believe them. I told myself it was coincidence. But my instincts whispered otherwise. The man I loved was slipping away, and the sister I trusted was getting too close. That moment at the funeral, when I saw Lily again, I remembered all of it. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and most of all, the strength I found to rise. Because what Lily didn't know was that my life had changed in ways she never could have predicted. And the man by my side now, he wasn't just my husband. He was the one man Daniel feared most. It all started unraveling 3 months before our wedding. At first, it was subtle. Daniel began rescheduling date nights, claiming urgent meetings with international clients. He stopped complimenting my outfits and started pointing out flaws instead. The blue dress he once called stunning now made me look washed out. My laugh, which he'd said was contagious, was suddenly too loud. Even the little routines that defined our bond, like me reading in bed while he scrolled through articles, began to bother him. "Can you turn off the light? I can't sleep." At the same time, Lily became more involved. "Just want everything to be perfect for my big sister," she'd say, with sugary sweetness. She volunteered to handle vendor meetings I missed due to work. My mom, Diane, welcomed the help, but I started to feel strangely excluded from my own wedding plans. One night, we went to our favorite Italian spot. Daniel barely looked at me. He picked at his food, responding to my stories with one-word answers. When I asked, "Is something wrong?" he smiled weakly and said, "Just a lot on my plate right now." The next day, I did laundry and caught the faint scent of floral perfume on his shirt. It wasn't mine. When I asked about it, he claimed he had hugged a new investor named Rebecca Mills. "Big hugger, wears way too much perfume," he said, chuckling. I called Olivia the next morning. "Am I being paranoid?" I asked over coffee. "Every couple gets edgy before the big day," she assured me. "You're just stressed." But I couldn't shake the unease. I tried harder spa days, surprise dinners, new lingerie, but the more I tried, the more he pulled away. Then came the cake tasting. Daniel had been excited about it for weeks. The morning of the appointment, he called. "Emergency meeting. Can Lily go with you? She knows what I like." That stopped me in my tracks. How did Lily know his cake preferences? I said nothing, but the knot in my stomach tightened. That evening, while tidying up his car, I found Lily's earring wedged between the passenger seat and center console. A silver dangle with a small sapphire one. I'd seen her wear dozens of times. It wasn't just a misplaced accessory, it was proof. I showed it to Daniel. He didn't flinch. She dropped it when I gave her a ride to the florist, he said smoothly. You never told me that, I replied. Didn't I? Must have slipped my mind. When I called Lily, her story matched his word for word. Oh my God, I've been looking everywhere for that. So glad he found it. Too perfect, too rehearsed. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts raced. Was I imagining this? Was I being irrational? I started seeing a therapist without telling Daniel. My weight dropped. My eyes were constantly red from lack of sleep. And still, I told myself I was just tired. Just overthinking. Then one night, Daniel came home and sat me down. I think we should postpone the wedding, he said. My world stopped spinning. Why? I asked, tears threatening to fall. What's wrong? Is it me? I just think we're moving too fast. I begged him to tell me the truth. He hugged me and said, It's not you, it's everything. Later that night, I woke around 3:00 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. From the hallway, I heard a whisper. Not now, she'll hear us. I know, soon. The next day, I packed his favorite sandwich and surprised him at his office. His assistant, Margot, looked startled. He's in a meeting right now, she stammered. I'll wait, I said. She stood abruptly. Actually, he asked not to be disturbed. Without thinking, I walked past her and opened his office door. There they were, Daniel and Lily, arms wrapped around each other, lips locked, completely unaware of me standing there, watching my world collapse. When the door clicked behind me, they pulled apart. Daniel straightened his tie. It's not what it looks like. Lily didn't even bother. It just happened, I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. For how long? Since the engagement party, Lily replied. Almost 4 months. I dropped the sandwich on his desk. You deserve each other, I said, turning to leave. Daniel called after me. Wait, let's talk. But I didn't stop. And just like that, everything I thought was secure vanished. Chicago was cold both literally and emotionally. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a broken heart, and no idea how to start over. My new studio apartment felt sterile, like a hotel room. I poured myself into work, pulling long hours to avoid the silence. Then came Madison, the firm's HR director. She invited me to a book club, which I declined twice before finally giving in. That's where I met Zachary Foster. He was quiet, polished, thoughtful, nothing like Daniel. We first connected over a discussion about psychological thrillers and the ethics of twist endings. When he learned I worked in marketing, he asked sharp, genuine questions, not the kind that led to sales pitches, but the kind that showed he was listening. He emailed the next day. Great conversation, want to continue it over coffee? I almost didn't reply, but something in his message felt safe. Over the next few months, we met often. At first, it was strictly professional coffee breaks, shared clients, strategy brainstorms. But slowly, the lines blurred. One night, he invited me to a quiet dinner, away from business and small talk. I hesitated but said yes. 20 minutes into the dinner, I had a panic attack. Zachary didn't freak out. He didn't rush me or ask invasive questions. He simply moved to my side of the table, spoke calmly, and helped me breathe through it. The next day, I received flowers at my office with a note. No pressure, no expectations, just hoping you're okay. It was the first time in years I felt seen. When I finally told him about Daniel and Lily, he listened quietly, then shared that his own ex-wife had left him for his business partner. Broken trust leaves scars, he said, but healing is possible. From there, we built something steady. Zachary was the kind of man who remembered how I took my coffee and never made me feel small. He never once compared me to anyone else. He respected my boundaries and gave me space to rebuild. A year later, he proposed with a modest emerald ring. I cried. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time, I felt sure. We planned a small wedding. My mother insisted I send Lily an invite. She responded with a cold email. We have prior commitments. I wasn't surprised. Our wedding was beautiful, simple, honest. And as I stood at the altar with Zachary, I knew finally that I had made it out of the storm. Our wedding was small, only 30 guests. A historic venue in Chicago, and the people who truly mattered. My parents flew in for the celebration. My father walked me down the aisle, whispering, "You look stronger than ever, kiddo." At my mother's urging, I had sent Lily an invitation. I didn't expect her to come. She replied coldly, "We won't be able to attend. Best wishes." It stung, but I moved on. Zachary's vows were everything I had longed to hear. Not grand promises of castles and riches, but quiet, steady devotion. "I promise to cherish the trust you've given me," he said, "and never take it for granted." 6 months later, we received the news. My mother's cancer had returned. It was terminal. I flew back to Boston and moved into my childhood home to care for her. Her strength, even in the face of death, was remarkable. During one of our last conversations, she said, "I wish you and Lily could find your way back to each other." I nodded, not knowing if I could ever fulfill that wish, but wanting to give her peace. When she passed, I called Lily. "Mom's gone," I said quietly. We hadn't spoken in years. Her voice cracked as she replied, "I'll be there soon." At the funeral, we exchanged stiff hellos. I introduced her to Zachary, and that's when her expression changed. She recognized the name Zachary Foster. So did Daniel. Their faces turned ghostly pale. What Lily didn't realize until that moment was that Zachary wasn't just my husband. He was the investor whose company had once outbid Daniel's, costing him millions in credibility. Karma, it seemed, had a long memory. The morning of the funeral was cold and gray. I stood in front of the mirror in my childhood bedroom, adjusting the black dress that clung too tightly to my ribs. Grief had stolen my appetite and sleep. Zachary appeared behind me, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. "I'm right beside you today," he whispered, meeting my eyes in the reflection. Downstairs, my father sat with a cup of untouched coffee. He'd barely spoken in days. The loss had hollowed him out. We drove together in silence to the funeral home, the weight of our shared sorrow filling the space between us. The room was already crowded when we arrived. Old neighbors, family friends, faces I hadn't seen in years. I stood by the casket, nodding at condolences, my eyes drifting to the entrance. Then I saw her, Lily. She walked in, Daniel at her side. Her black dress was sleek, tailored to perfection, her makeup flawless. The ring on her finger sparkled under the chapel lights. Daniel looked stiff and uneasy. Whispers rippled through the crowd. My father stiffened beside me. "Thomas," I whispered. "Breathe." Lily approached. "Rachel," she said, her voice neutral. "It's been a long time," I replied. "I need to speak with you, privately." I followed her into a side room. She closed the door and turned to me. "We just bought a summer house on Cape Cod, 8 bedrooms, private beach access. We're thinking about starting a family." I stared at her. "Is there a reason you're telling me this now?" She smirked. "I thought you might want to know how well we're doing." "Poor you. Still alone at 38. I smiled. "Actually, I'm married. Have you met my husband?" Her expression faltered. I opened the door. "Zachary, come meet my sister." He walked in, offering a polite smile. Right behind him, Daniel appeared, and the blood drained from his face. "Foster," he said, stunned. "Reynolds," Zachary replied, cool and composed. "You two know each other?" Lily asked, confused. "We've crossed paths in business," Zachary said. "Years ago," Daniel added, trying to recover. "Well," I said, slipping my arm into Zachary's. "We've been married 2 wonderful years." The funeral director entered to announce the service was beginning. We filed back into the main room. As we took our seats, my father suddenly gasped. "Dad," I cried, grabbing his arm. He clutched his chest. Within moments, a doctor among the guests examined him. It wasn't a heart attack, just stress. But it was enough to shake us all. For 20 tense minutes, Lily, Zachary, and I sat in silence, bound by our concern for him. We carried on with the service, grief threading our every word. I delivered a eulogy filled with memories and love. Lily followed me. She stumbled through her speech, tears streaking her perfect makeup. I stepped up, placing a hand on her back. "It's okay," I whispered. "Take your time," she finished with a trembling voice. As we left the chapel, I felt something shift. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Seeing Lily again after 6 years stirred emotions I thought I'd buried. Her polished exterior barely hid the wear behind her eyes. At the funeral reception, she cornered me in the sitting room, boasting about beach houses and luxury renovations. Her tone was sharp, but I no longer felt wounded, just detached. Then came the moment I introduced Zachary. "This is my husband, Zachary Foster," I said calmly. Lily's face went still. Zachary and Daniel exchanged looks that said everything. They knew each other. From the tension in Daniel's jaw and the way Zachary held my hand tighter, it was clear their history wasn't friendly. "Foster," Daniel muttered. "As in Foster Investments?" Zachary nodded. "It's been a while since Innotech and Macintosh." Lily blinked, confused. Daniel, however, understood. Years ago, he and Zachary had been rivals in the same investment deal. Zachary's pick won big. Daniel's failed. Now I realized I had married the man who once indirectly cost Daniel millions. The funeral service resumed, but the tension lingered like a storm cloud. My father had a health scare. A brief chest pain that paused the proceedings. Zachary immediately called for help, showing the calm care I'd grown to rely on. Lily, surprisingly, looked genuinely concerned. For 20 long minutes, we sat in anxious silence, focused on our father instead of our history. When the doctor confirmed it was stress and not a heart attack, we all breathed easier. The service continued, somber and beautiful. I gave the eulogy, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. When Lily stood to speak next, she faltered. Her tears were real. I walked up and placed my hand gently on her back. "It's okay," I whispered. At the graveside, rain fell softly. Daniel stood off to the side, restless. Lily, however, stayed close to our father. Her earlier bravado replaced by something real. Perhaps grief was beginning to soften her armor. That night, Zachary had to return to Chicago for a board meeting. "Will you be okay here alone?" he asked, brushing hair from my face. "I'll be fine," I said. "Dad needs help sorting through Mom's things. I need this time." Back at the house, I found Dad flipping through an old photo album in the garden. "She labeled every picture," he said, eyes misty. "Said we'd want to know who was who one day." That afternoon, I started going through Mom's belongings. Every dress, every note in her handwriting brought memories flooding back. In her nightstand, I found a journal soft leather, her cursive handwriting inside. It was filled with reflections, entries about Lily and me, her hopes, her regrets. The last entry read, "My greatest regret is leaving with my girls still estranged. I hope they find their way back to each other." Just as I wiped my tears, the doorbell rang. It was Lily, alone. No Daniel. She looked different without him, smaller, less composed. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. In the kitchen, I poured coffee while she sat in silence. When I asked where Daniel was, she hesitated. "He doesn't know I'm here. I told him I needed space. Then the dam broke." "I'm miserable, Rachel," she whispered. "I've been pretending for years. Daniel, he's not who I thought. Controlling, cold. His business is crumbling, but we keep up appearances because we have to." She shared that everything vacations, homes, luxury had been financed on debt and facade. "He tracks everything I spend, checks my phone, and the prenup. If I leave, I get nothing." I slid Mom's journal across the table. "Read it," I said quietly. Lily cried as she flipped through the pages. "She saw through us all, didn't she?" I nodded. "She always did." "I'm leaving him," Lily confessed. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." My heart felt heavy not with hate, but with something resembling compassion. The sister who caused my deepest wounds was now lost in her own storm. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, voice breaking. "I just wanted you to know." That night, we sat in silence, flipping through old photos and remembering Mom. The distance between us hadn't vanished, but something shifted. A thread, maybe. A beginning. Lily sat at my mother's kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. The silence between us stretched taut. The woman who once gleamed with envy now looked fragile, frayed around the edges. Her voice cracked as she admitted, "I've hated myself for years, Rachel. Every time Mom mentioned you, every time she bragged about your promotions or new clients, I felt the weight of what I'd done." It wasn't bitterness I felt. It wasn't satisfaction either. It was something quieter. Compassion, perhaps. "I'm planning to leave him," she said, her eyes not meeting mine. "I've already found a lawyer. I needed you to know that I'm done pretending." We didn't hug. We didn't cry in each other's arms. We simply sat, two sisters slowly shifting from enemies back toward something resembling kin. That night, after Lily left, I stayed up flipping through my mother's journal. Her final entries felt like soft whispers from the past, nudging me forward. "I pray they find their way back to each other," she had written. 6 months later, I was back in Chicago, life returning to a rhythm. The brownstone Zachary and I bought together was slowly becoming a home painted walls, hanging pictures, dinners cooked in rather than ordered out. And then one morning, 2 pink lines, pregnant. After all the failed tries, the late night tears, and the quiet fears that it would never happen, it finally did. Joy swept in like a warm breeze, but it carried sorrow too. I'd never get to see my mother hold her grandchild. I called Lily. "I wanted you to hear it from me," I said. "I'm pregnant." Her pause was long, then, "Congratulations, Rachel, really?" We weren't best friends. We weren't suddenly whole, but the call felt honest, and that mattered. Lily had moved into a small apartment, picked up work at a modest marketing agency, and started therapy. She said she wanted to rebuild her life without Daniel, without pretense. "It's not glamorous," she admitted, "but it's mine." Zachary, always steady, painted the nursery a soft sage green while humming an off-key tune. I watched him from the doorway, my heart swelling. As I sat in the rocker by the window, I thought about the legacy I wanted to pass on to my child. Not perfection, not vengeance, resilience, love earned, not demanded. And the truth that sometimes the deepest wounds shape the strongest hearts, because what had once been a betrayal that broke me became the force that rebuilt me, and I wouldn't change a thing. The delivery room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft whispers of nurses. Zachary held my hand, his thumb gently brushing mine as I breathed through the pain. Hours of labor had left me exhausted, but the moment I heard my daughter's first cry, everything else melted away. Tears streamed down Zachary's face as he cut the cord. "She's perfect," he whispered. In that moment, I thought of my mother, of how she would have cradled this baby and smiled with the same warmth she gave me when I was a child. Loss and joy braided together, and I let both exist. We named her Grace, because that's what she was, a quiet blessing born from years of turmoil, healing, and unexpected mercy. Back home, Lily sent flowers and a handwritten card. "Welcome to the world, Grace. May you grow strong, kind, and unafraid like your mother." I placed the card in Grace's memory box. Over the next few months, Lily visited occasionally. Never unannounced, always with respect. She'd hold Grace gently, as if afraid of breaking something too new, too sacred. Our conversations were careful but honest. One day she asked, "Do you think Mom would have forgiven me?" I paused, then answered, "I think she already did. She just wanted us to get there too." Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm trying." So was I. As Grace grew, so did the bridge between us. Then came a surprise. Lily invited me to her apartment for dinner. She cooked, from scratch. It was simple pasta, salad, and garlic bread. But the table was set with candles and fresh flowers. It wasn't a performance. It was a peace offering. Over glasses of wine, she finally told me about the moment she knew she had made a mistake with Daniel. It was 6 months into their relationship before their wedding. "He yelled at me for being 5 minutes late, at a party, in front of everyone," she said, "but I'd already betrayed you. I told myself I had to make it work, to prove I hadn't destroyed my life for nothing." She had stayed out of shame, out of fear, and eventually, out of habit. "I thought you hated me so much, you'd never speak to me again, so I just kept pretending." I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't reassure. I just gave her space. Forgiveness isn't a single act, it's a daily choice. That night, I chose to keep trying. Weeks later, I returned the gesture. I invited her to Grace's first birthday. To my surprise, she came early, helped hang streamers, and even baked cupcakes. She and Zachary made small talk that didn't feel forced. Daniel was no longer part of her life, and somehow, the air around her felt lighter. At the party, while Grace smashed her tiny fist into frosting, I caught Lily watching me from across the room. She smiled not with smugness, not with jealousy, but with something gentler. Pride, maybe, peace. After the guests left, Lily stayed behind to help clean. As we stood side by side in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, she said, "Thank you for letting me be part of this." I looked at her, really looked. "Thank you for showing up." We didn't become best friends overnight, but we were becoming sisters again. I used to think the worst thing Lily ever did was steal Daniel. Now I see the real tragedy would have been letting that be the end of our story. Grace deserved better. We both did. And maybe, just maybe, my mother knew all along. Sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Rachel's story is one many of us can relate to. Trust broken, love betrayed, and a future shattered. But through loss, she found resilience. Through heartbreak, she found healing. And in the most unexpected place, she rediscovered family. This story reminds us that we cannot always control what happens to us, but we can choose how we rise from it. Forgiveness isn't about excusing the pain, it's about freeing ourselves from it. Rachel didn't rebuild her life overnight. It took time, courage, and help from those who truly cared. But in the end, she found peace, love, and purpose far beyond what she once imagined. If you're going through something difficult right now, remember, this chapter is not your whole story. The pain may be part of your past, but it doesn't have to define your future. Have you ever found strength through a painful experience? Share your story in the comments. Your words might help someone else heal. If the story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us we are never alone in our journey.